This is George Zilbergeld. This is Citizens Going Wild. And I'm going to start with an unusual story that I hope you'll be able to help me out with. It's called The Mystery of Taiwan. Now, you rarely hear the word mystery and Taiwan in the same sentence, but there's something startling going on in the world, and I wonder if it isn't meaningful for the rest of us. Taiwan is an island. It has 24 million people. They live bunched together because there's not a lot of room when you're on an island. But the most startling thing of all is that Taiwan has the best record in fighting the coronavirus of anyone else on the planet, as far as I know. A nation of 24 million on an island, scrunched together. They didn't make much of an effort regarding mass or social gathering or anything, actually. They didn't make much of an effort to fight coronavirus, and yet they have one of the best records in the world. It's worth looking at. There might be some obvious explanation, but I can't think of it. 7 deaths. We have more traffic accidents in New Jersey than they have had from the coronavirus. And here's another contrasting thing. Oh, they've had 573 cases. We could do that in an hour here. It is remarkable. And someone has been nice enough to contrast this with Los Angeles County to give you some perspective. They have 10 million people, and they've had 300,000 cases and 7,000 deaths. So how the hell have they done this? Well, it turns out, maybe, it turns out that what the politicians do is a lot less important than the history of the people who have been there. And it's possible that somehow in fighting another virus, SARS, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome, they acquired some kind of immunity. I'm not a scientist. I don't even play a scientist on television, although I could, I suppose. And probably do as well as any of you would. But here's the thing. Taiwan had one of the biggest, highest SARS infection rates in the world. This was in 2003. And their infection from COVID-19 is one of the lowest. They never locked down. They don't lock down now. They don't seem to have done anything right, according to the experts that I see on television. And they must be expert because they're introduced as experts. Is it possible that the severity of a new virus might have more to do with factors within the population, what they have gone through their history, than the political response? Taiwan did almost everything wrong, but generated what might well be the best public health outcome of any country in the world. Think about that. If you have any ideas, please let me know. I am very, very interested in this topic, and I'm sure you are as well. What I wanted to do now is think about the world after Trump. First, I wanted to give him credit, which very few are doing. He did some things extremely well, I believe, and I think he should receive credit for it. For example, he had the most important, inclusive period of prosperity of any president in our history, I think. It was inclusive, included everyone. Now, not everyone did as well, and the rich did better than anyone else. And I understand that, but for God's sakes, calm down and listen to this. Trump had the most inclusive, greatest prosperity that I think the nation has ever had. It pulled in people who were poor, gave them jobs at generally higher wages than it would have gotten before Trump. It pulled in minorities, blacks, Hispanics, Um, he pulled in just about everyone, I think. It was about as inclusive a period of prosperity as we have ever had. And I think if you're going to yell at him, you ought to also give him credit where he did the right thing. You may not have liked the way he did it, reducing taxes on the rich a great deal. I didn't like that either. But the point is, it worked. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, which is a very old saying. He did other things as well. He fought back. He was the first and only president so far that we have had that has fought back against the economic and political onslaught of China. Now, you may not have liked this. I mean, because you may not like me giving him credit for this, but let's be honest. No president has had the guts to go up against China. Not that they were that powerful, in my opinion, but no one had the guts to go up against them. He had the guts to go up against them. We all knew that it would hurt our farmers because they buy a lot of our farm products in China. That's one of the ways that we are doing better than they are. But he went ahead anyway. That takes guts. I don't know if Biden will have that sort of guts. Hopefully he will. So he fought back against the economic onslaught of China. He advanced peace in the Middle East. He did it in a most unusual way that most people never even thought of. That is, he went around the Palestinians instead of trying to go through them and negotiate, which has done nothing much that's positive. There are now additional countries in the Middle East that have relationships with Israel, and there might be more on the way. I don't know if they'll still come when Biden becomes president, but we'll see. Nonetheless, you have to give him credit for that. If anyone else did this, you would be giving him credit. Okay? He made our allies pay up. The leeches of Western Europe has basically had us paying for their defense. And some of the countries like Germany are quite prosperous and could easily afford to spend more money. For decades, we paid for the defense of Western Europe. We pay about 2.5% of our income, national income, for the military. Most of the countries of Western Europe have been paying, they've been hovering around 1%. So this was quite an advance to get them to move up from 1%, and he has done this. I don't know if they'll go back down and become leeches again, but we'll see. He did something else. He enhanced our military a great deal. I don't think that was that necessary, but nonetheless, he has enhanced the military power of the United States tremendously. And, as the Romans say, or the Romans used to say, this is before the pizza era, the Roman Empire rulers used to say, if you want peace, prepare for war. And then you'll be powerful enough, no one will mess with you. And he seems to have done this successfully. We haven't gotten into any wars during his time in office, which is a new one for us, right? Don't forget that. We have to give credit where credit is due. He did something else, which is special for me since I was a professor for many years. And he is the first and only president to fight back against the anti-democratic, anti-free speech forces that have been dominating our colleges and universities for about 2 decades now. And now have reached the point where basically the anti-democratic, anti-free speech forces just dominate the entire conversation on college campuses, and few dare to go up against them. He mobilized basically the money of the federal government. And there's an old saying that he who has the gold makes the rules. And sometimes that's a good thing. He has basically forced the universities to some degree to act in a fairer way, in a more supportive way, in supporting free speech and in reducing the wild amount of anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism that has been dominating our colleges for a long time. He is the first, he is the only. It is going to be fascinating to see what President Biden does about this. In particular, there are federal loans that students get to go to college, and to be cut off from that source is to mean death for a lot of colleges. So they have paid attention, and we'll see what has happened. This was done, by the way, through the bureaucracy. The Department of Education has another department within that department, and it's the Division of Civil Rights. And that gives them the power to go onto college campuses and say, if you want our money, you're going to have to do thus and such. And you're going to have to fight back against anti-Semitism that is now dominating your campus. And you're going to have to fight for freedom of speech. This is little known to most Americans because the mainstream media is not interested in focusing on college campuses and what's going on there. And as far as minorities goes, they have their list of minorities that they care about and the list of minorities they don't care about. All right. These rules, by the way, will stay in effect because of, they're called executive orders, and they're orders, demands by the president that stay in effect until they're overruled. It's going to be quite significant to see if President Biden overrules what President Trump has put in place in the federal bureaucracy, in the Department of Education, in the Department of Civil Rights. That's not an area that most people look at, but from now on, you'll be looking at that, I hope. I am looking forward to Biden doing one thing above all else. I am very fond of the idea that everyone in America should have proper medical care. And I would like to get that done so we can move on to other problems. There is a program that's called Medicaid that I'm sure you've heard of. And basically this takes care of poor people, including poor people who work for a living hard at hard jobs, but just don't get benefits. And this program is for them. Here's the deal that President Obama made, which is, you really have to give him credit on this one. It's part of Obamacare, but it's not a well-known part. This is the deal that you can get if you're a state. The government, the federal government, will pay 90% of the medical costs of taking care of poor people in your state. 90%. After 3 years, that is, for the first 3 years, they'll pay 100%. It's free money. It's billions of dollars. All you have to do is say, yes, I'll take it. That's it. Just put out your hands and wait for the federal government to dump money in your lap, or your hands, I suppose. And people haven't done this yet. There are 14 states run by what I would call screaming jackasses who have no brains and even less heart. And they have not just taken the money, and it's big money. It's big money. I have some numbers here. By not taking this money, Texas loses $9.2 billion every year. Florida says goodbye to $5 billion. Georgia is out $4.9 billion. All you have to do is take it and use it to help poor people get proper medical care. It is one of the most brilliant, generous things that the federal government has done in years. And if it weren't for these jackasses, these fools on roller skates, these governors who won't take the money, we still don't have a universal health care system. that benefits everyone. Alabama could bring in $2 billion. You'll notice, by the way, most of the states that don't take the money are the poorest states. North Carolina, well, they're doing a little better, but they lost $5.7 billion. In other words, just go, put out your hands, and the federal government will dump billions of dollars, and you can use this billions of dollars for a wonderful thing. You provide proper health care for people. There are still 14 states that are run by jackasses. I think I better stop there before I get overexcited and start to drive down to some of these states. A sad thing happened about 3 days ago. Someone that you may not have heard of, Rabbi Lord Sachs, who was the chief rabbi of England for many, many years, of Great Britain, passed away. He was, in the opinion of some, including me, the wisest person on the planet for several decades. He was a true scholar, and he did something else. Jews read the Bible during the course of a year. They go through it section by section, and they're done in a year. He wrote commentary on what is said in the Bible and interpreted it for modern ears and hearts. He was, I think, the best of anyone who ever did this in the modern era. And although it sounds like something far away, he basically dealt with practical issues and provided, I believe, very wise answers to various questions you might have. And those questions are not just for Bible readers. Those questions are eternal people questions. There's something that is said that when people die by Jews, and may his memory be a blessing. And that's what I'm saying for Rabbi Lord Sachs. I thank you for listening, and I hope that I see you next week, where I intend to lead off by following through on this area of the mystery of Taiwan. And if anyone has any ideas on that, get in touch with me. Usually it doesn't go well when a political science professor enters into scientific discussions, but this may be more of a political science question. Wouldn't it be crazy, crazy, crazy if after all of the politicians yelling, it turns out that the most important factors regarding the coronavirus are local questions? I hope to see you next week. I thank you for listening, and this is George Zilbergeld telling you to have a good week and be kind to those that you love.